Welcome to today's webinar, 10 new ideas to reduce contact volume. Certainly seems to be a very popular topic with everyone who's registered so far. So just delighted to welcome to you three speakers. Going to be a fascinating webinar. First of all, I'd like to introduce John Casey from CC Planning. John's worked in the contact center industry for many, many years. I first met John when he was at the Professional Planning Forum, as it was known then. And John, it's delightful to have you back on another one of our webinars.
Thanks, John. I always enjoy attending.
Excellent. Also delighted to be joined by Sarah Morgan from Lukiat Consulting. Welcome back, Sarah.
Thanks, John T. Pleasure to be here.
And you're going to be sharing some ideas on reducing contact volumes and what people can do to improve that.
Yeah, very much looking at the customer journey and how we can center the customer in what we're doing, and technologically as well.
Wonderful. Welcome back. And also delighted to welcome for his first webinar with us, Tiago Duruana from TalkDesk. Tiago, thanks for joining us. And you're going to be looking at perhaps ways that there could be a technology angle on helping reduce contact volumes.
Thank you for the invite. Yes, exactly. In the recent years, I've been focusing on digital engagement, and I have a couple of best practices to share for those who want to save money with call deflection.
Wonderful. So just like to ask everyone in the audience, if you're not already logged into our chat room, we do like to carry on the discussion. We've got less than 40% of our audience in the chat room so far. So here's the link. Just type in cch.chat, or you can just type in callcenterhelper.com/chat. Just stick it into the link in your browser here, or you can do it on your mobile phone. Just put in your first name, email address, press login, and you'll be in the chat room. You can talk with us, you can talk with the rest of the audience. It's very easy to do. It is in a separate window, so you could put it into your mobile phone if you'd prefer. Just type in cch.chat. And it's quite useful if you have the two screens side by side on your screen. They are separate windows, but generally these days, most people have got pretty big screens, so you can go in there. The other advantage being in the chat room is you can download the slides. There's quite a lot of detail we're going through in the three presentations. So just click on download webinar slides, or if you'd like to connect on LinkedIn, there's also links on that page where you can link to John Casey, or you can link to Sarah Morgan, or link to Tiago Duruana. So all the links to the LinkedIn profiles there. So that's on that page, download the slides. We're also going to be doing a quiz in a little bit. So after John's presentation. So here's some of the buttons that we've got there, A, B, C, or D. Just need to click on those to vote in the quiz. So yeah, if you're not already logged into the chat room, we've got about another 25 people who've just joined us. Here we are, cch.chat is the link there. And we'd love to get you into the chat room. Okay, if you want a copy of the slides and a replay afterwards, you can also get the slides through the chat room. But for the to get a recording of the webinar, callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars should be available in about an hour and a half for you. Other advantage being in the chat room is that you can ask questions or raise a tip, just so we can see the difference between the two. If you could do #question if you have a question, or #tip if you want to put a tip in, just so we can identify that. So we're going to kick off with a poll. This is on the, not in the chat room, this is in the webinar voting. And that poll is, do you measure first contact resolution in your contact center? So the answer is very straightforward. Yes, we currently measure it. No, we're planning to measure first contact resolution, or no, we have no plans for measuring it. So if you'd just like to vote on that. John, first contact resolution is quite an interesting one, because there's a whole range of different ways of measuring it.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's one of those, when I was back in the outsourcing days, we looked for the way to give us the best number in terms of how many days we counted it from. Probably now we focus more on repeat callers and how many callers, whether they got through or whether they had to call a second time, which is probably inclusive of your abandons, and just look for what a static measure, and if it goes up, then we know we're not achieving it.
So let's share the results up on the screen here. And so the vast majority of people do measure first contact resolution, 58%. Quite a large number of people planning it, 34%, and only 9% of people not measuring it. So that's quite an interesting result. So it's quite encouraging to see such a large number there that have either measuring it now or planning to do so.
Yeah, having those balanced KPIs is so important to making sure that there's an understanding of truly resolving the customer's issues at that first contact rather than simply getting them off the phone is really heartening.
Wonderful. Well, probably time to start in earnest now. John, with your presentation, perhaps if you'd like to, if I stop sharing, if you'd like to share your slides and take us through your thoughts on reducing contact volumes.
Yeah, and I suppose, John, as the slides come up, there's always one caveat that I always like to say, which is we have to make sure that volume isn't seen as negative, because depending on what we're doing, getting volume might be the bane or might be the whole purpose of what we're trying to do, especially if we're in a sales environment, etc. So for me, a lot of this is about getting the right volume and getting the volume that adds value to the business and the customers truly need that contact, as opposed to just volume for volume's sake. So I think my slides are up now, John, are they?
They are indeed, yes.
They are brilliant. So as a planner, I always go back to that first thing, which is Erlang, which we've done webinars on in the past and stuff like that. And I suppose that hygiene factor, what makes a good call, going back to basics, is a customer happy, are they looking at things, is really speed of service. And the first thing they remember is, did they get through in 10 seconds or 10 minutes or, God forbid, worse? And really, to get that speed of service, it's really an output from 3 key numbers going through an algorithm, the Erlang algorithm that many of you will be familiar with. And that's what staff we have available to us, how long they do or take time to speak to each customer, and what volume of customers are like to get to us. And those 3 numbers, all of which are variable on the day, linked to speed of service. And just to take it one little step further, there's often not much we can do on staff. We've got a budget and we can't magically get staff for tomorrow or the next day. I mean, currently I'm helping with an organization, as we've mentioned, and we're probably talking 10 to 12 weeks from saying we need more staff to physically taking a call as we go through the steps. So we're stuck there. Talk time, it's probably the one we always target, but there's lots of elements of a call that can't be taken out. You've got your data security, you've got, some basics of understanding the problem, you've got your resolution. So you might be able to trim it, but again, it doesn't remove. So it probably looks at volume, and we often think that we can't control volume. I suppose that's what the tips we're going to go through today are actually looking at, which is when can we control volume and when can we do something different to, I suppose, balance the business results, balance the staff experience, and balance the customer experience as they get connected, which is probably the win-win-win situation. So some things just from my living in the trenches, trying to cope with COVID. And I suppose one thing we often say since COVID has come in is think about what logically happens and then do the opposite, because some of the days we've had just make no sense. So we expect volume to go up, it'll go down. We expect volume to drop, it'll come in. But one thing I've learned over the past is to challenge the old thing about balancing the schedules, trying to have enough people at the start of the day, enough people at the end of the day, and actually going, sometimes we've got to think about what happens if we're short, particularly early in the day. And it's what I said earlier on, John, just before we started, when we talked about first contact resolution and even looking at repeat callers. For every call we don't get to in the morning, that customer is fairly likely to call back later in the day. So we put a 2 for 1 or a 3 for 1 on that customer's experience, and we have a very artificial volume. So the first thing is actually working out what is fake volume and what is true volume. Because if a customer has to try 5 times during the day, there's still one customer. So by getting to them for early, getting to them first time around, we can get rid of that fake volume and maybe get a true sense for the calls we have and get rid of, I suppose, a fake perception that we've been very busy. We may not have been, we just couldn't deal with the customers at the first time that they wanted us. We then talked about first contact resolution, and something that's always resonated with me over the years, and it came from a book by Bill Price and Bill Jaff, looking back at work they'd done with Amazon back in the day. And they actually said, is first contact resolution good enough when we can go to zero? Are we making customers call us when we could have informed them what is happening firstly? And the email I always chuckle when it arrives comes from Amazon to tell me that we're sorry, but your parcel's been delayed. And sometimes they've told me it's delayed and it comes within the hour. But what they're doing is they're telling us and they're setting our expectations. So if I had been expecting that parcel today, and I know the postman in my area has always arrived by now, I'd be getting nervous at 2 in the afternoon. And I might phone to find out if it's likely to be delivered or not. But Amazon will have picked that up in their supply chain and informed me it's delayed. It'll be with you tomorrow. It'll be with you on Saturday, whatever that might be. And in insurance, we've actually started looking and came up with things like, we know there are customers always ring us for things like their direct debit or their automatic payment has failed. So why can't, if we're quiet, phone them first and remove volume down the line that we know we can plan and actually help the customer not go through the stress of trying to get through, particularly on busy days. It's still a contact, but it's a controlled contact, but actually it's helping that customer. First we did it outbound, now we do it through texts or emails, giving them a link that they can click on and make the payment and remove. But it's very much about identifying where that problem is and where the fake or unrealistic volume is across the day. And I suppose that Amazon concept of contacting people almost before they realised the problem existed. EasyJet, an airline here in Europe as well, do something very similar where they started texting you 6, 7, 8 hours before your flight to tell you it was delayed. Great for me when I was traveling, because then I could phone them, change my flight, do things instead of sitting in an airport or arriving somewhere after the last train or buses went. What was that proactiveness and telling me about a problem early in the process? And then the third one that I want to speak to before I let Sarah and Tiago develop and move things forward is this next best action. And it goes back to what I said a couple of slides ago about we always focus on average handle time. We focus on that talk time and say, do it quicker, get rid of the customer, churn the customer, get on to the next one. But actually, if we want relationships and if we're in an area where the relationship with the customer leads to business as we move forward, actually taking time to understand the customer, build the relationship and see if there's a next best action now that removes volume or removes the interactions in the future, isn't that bad? Thinking about, an extra 2 minutes now stops the customer going through security, stating a problem, allowing the staff member to look up their records in the future. That all takes time. That's all double within the call. So sometimes think about it more of a case management. If you expect this customer to call us 8 times over a year at 6 minutes each, 48 minutes, what if we spent 2 extra minutes on 2 of those calls and got down to 4 calls? It's a net win. So what you're seeing in the 3 things that I'm bringing up is a lot of thinking about fake volume, thinking about volume that we as the company are actually enforcing onto the customer and are encouraging the customer to have to endure that contact in the future, or that contact that if we had just sent them a text or an email or an update, they wouldn't have to make. So that's the 3 things is, look at the schedules, get that call early to avoid abandons, think about letting people know up front, and think about when to invest time in early contacts in the relationship to cut out calls in the future. So I'll hand back, Jonty. Jonty.
You're on mute.
Thank you very much for that, John. And some great thoughts there. If you could, if you're not already logged into our chat room, here's the address, cch.chat. And if you could say what you like best about John's presentation. I think there's a few things I loved in there. Start the day with enough people, front end your schedules of the day. Otherwise, you're going to be playing catch up for the rest of the day. Callers who abandon usually call back at least once, which is effectively false volume. I like that. If a customer calls 5 times in a day because they couldn't get through the first time or the first, third or fourth time, there's still just one customer. So that's a great way of reducing volume, is just answering the calls early. And spend longer on the first call to reduce repeat calls. We can always focus down on reducing average handling time, but sometimes actually increasing average handling time on the first call could be the right thing to do. Well, let's have a look at what the audience is saying in the chat room. Take a couple of tips before we jump across to Sarah. The first one is optimize self-service support available online for simpler processes. For instance, a frequently asked questions section to help free up your agents to help with more complex processes or issues. Customers will often like to have a conversation with someone when it's complex, so it feels tailored to their situation and more likely to feel understood and less likely to call back. Sarah, I think there's some excellent advice in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alex, I wonder whether you've been looking at my slides, because some of that is absolutely at the heart of what I talk about. And you also made a comment about KPIs on a different comment, which is spot on as well.
Okay, let's have a look at, Erin has said, when looking at duration, considering stuff outside the call itself, downstream activities and morale can have an effect on duration length. And also says, consider all your channels when calculating first contact resolution. Try and avoid doing each of them in isolation. I think that's quite an interesting one. Yeah. Alex has said, is there a difference between FCR, which are first contact resolution, and right first time, I think RFT? John, is there a difference between the two?
Oh, that's a good question. And I suppose right first time is actually about doing the right thing on a call and making sure that you have a knowledgeable staff who can do things. With first contact resolution, it's actually thinking about how much interaction you need. And you can be right first time, but if that customer has to go away and get information that you put into the process, you won't get FCR from that.
No, I think FCR is more of a concept in a way, I guess, that what you're trying to do is you're trying to reduce the number of repeat calls, not necessarily, because if it takes, sometimes you'd say, try this, see what happens. Well, they're going to call back because, so that's a good, repeat call. But actually, if you can reduce the numbers, so it's not 4, 5, or John, as you said, multiple minutes spent on resolution, quite good. So Danny said, is that I think in response to your slide, John, is there an expected percentage of abandoned calls that are expected to call back on the day?
I think it depends on your service, and it depends if a customer has a choice. Now, I know in car insurance, if someone abandons and your competitor then answers, they're gone.
And Tiago, I don't know, this is presumably something that with some technology, it's sort of potential to measure the percentage of abandoned calls, potentially they've called back.
Sorry, do you mind repeating the question?
The percentage of abandoned calls that call back into the contact center, presumably that technology can help you analyze that and analyze those figures.
Yes, absolutely. I think it was Peter Drucker that said, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So yeah, it's quite important to have the right technology that enables contact centers everywhere and business everywhere to know exactly what's happening and what they can do to change that course of action. So absolutely. So
talking of changing course of action, probably a good time to jump across now to Sarah, where you can share us your thoughts about what could be done to change your course of action.
Thanks, John T. So I'm a consultant and coach, and I focus really on performance and clarity for businesses and for people. So thinking about what is critical to help to reduce contact into the contact centre in the first place is understanding your customer journey. And that's not simply the sales or the support process, but really end to end, from a customer first becoming aware of you and your services and products, right the way through to repeat business and referrals, hopefully. And once you've got a solid understanding of that, you can design self-service capabilities in a much more straightforward way that truly support that customer journey, making sure that they're really effortless to use, that you've not put too much bureaucracy into them. There's no point in making amazing self-service technologies where the customer then has to call in to remember their password, for example. Making sure that it's really seamless across all of your technologies as well, or platforms. I remember a consulting assignment I had where the client told me in no uncertain terms they didn't need a mobile website, they didn't need an app because, and I quote, "no one buys on mobile." And it just really showed me the lack of understanding, firstly, of people's research and buying habits. Quite often people will make their buying decision on mobile, but then move on to laptop or desktop to make the purchase. But also a lack of understanding of the post-sales support, nurture, and move to repeat business and referrals as well. So when you're thinking about your self-service capability, be aware of any assumptions that you're making about what people may or may not do in a self-serve capacity. And you can also use that first contact to really showcase those self-serve capabilities, so customers don't need to call back time and again because they understand how to do things online. Prevention is better than cure ultimately as well, and having a culture of continuous improvement where every issue and every incident is an amazing opportunity to learn and to develop and do better. One of my favourite books is by Matthew Syed, and it's called Black Box Thinking. And he compares the culture in the aviation industry with the culture in the healthcare industry. And in aviation, every incident, every near miss, every mistake is reported, reviewed, and used as an opportunity for learning. There's minimal blame culture. And because of that, they can learn from all of those near misses. And it's ultimately one of the safest modes of transportation now. In comparison to the healthcare industry, where mistakes and near misses and incidents are absolutely hidden, there's a real fear culture, even in the UK. In the US, it's far worse, obviously, with a much more litigious attitude, but it's still really poorly managed in the UK. And that fear of reprisals means that lessons aren't learned, and the healthcare industry still isn't anywhere near as safe and secure as it should be. So something that I've taken from my tech background into contact centres is my love of a post-mortem, understanding what went wrong, why did it go wrong, what can we learn from it, but also then looking at it in a pre-mortem context. So what's gone wrong in the past, what might happen in the future, and how can we move to prevent that? So applying those lessons learned. To have that growth mindset, you have to ensure that the employee experience is at the centre of it. And there's a real sense of psychological safety, making sure that people are really open and comfortable to discuss mistakes that they've made or errors and flaws that they see in the systems and processes. If people don't feel that they can feed back on potential improvements, then it's very hard for them to build that culture of continuous improvement. Then the proactive problem management, and John made mention of this earlier, but if we know where things can go wrong for customers, you know where they fall off the happy path of their customer journey, and you'll have insight into what tends to trigger contact. You can then do things to prevent that contact happening, either by getting in touch with the customer ahead of them needing to contact you to tell them that you're aware of the issue, that you're on top of it, and that you'll let them know when it's resolved, or by being truly proactive and resolving the issue in the first place. Again, through a number of assignments I've had, organizations can feel loath to invest money in fixing a problem, something that they perceive as technical debt, because they think that it's going to detract or slow down the delivery of a new feature or a new product. But when you take a step back and look at the amount of contact that fault can be causing and the overall cost, the business case, and also the customer satisfaction issues, the business case to fix it once and for all can stack up quite quickly. And then finally, reducing repeat contact. According to Call Center Helper magazine back in 2016, between 10 and 24% of contact is repeat contact. And that happens either because the customer's query wasn't resolved at that first contact, or because they've not had an update if they've got a complex query, a complex issue for resolution. So firstly, focusing on your employee experience. Employee experience and customer experience are so inextricably linked. Disengaged employees will not resolve their customers' queries well, and it will lead to repeat contact. And to Alex's tip earlier, so will imbalanced KPIs. If your prime measure is average handling time, your agents are going to feel really motivated to get customers off the call quickly. So having a range of balanced metrics, thinking about repeat calls, total handling time, customer satisfaction, and so on, will lead to a much more rounded interaction where you're far more likely to have that first contact resolution happening. And again, John mentioned it earlier, but all contact centers tend to have an ebb and flow. So use your quiet times to recontact customers who've had a complex query to check that everything's now working and that they've got the information that they need to be able to move forward. And that's also perhaps a time when you can reiterate the self-serve capabilities to customers. And finally, if the customer does have a really complex issue, make sure that any follow-up contact that's promised is diarised, maintained, and actually happens. Because if the customer doesn't hear when they're expecting to, they're certainly going to be straight on the phone to follow that up. So in summary, make sure that you've got self-serve capabilities that are really seamless. Preventing issues occurring through fixing technical debt and through having a culture of continuous improvement. Thinking about your proactive management, your early warning systems, and focus on employee experience to make sure that you're reducing your repeat contact. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed for that, Sarah. And some great things there. We're going to jump across to the quiz in a minute. So if you're not already logged into our chat room, that's where we're going to be holding the quiz. Just type in cch.chat into your browser. We've got only about half of the audience logged into the chat room currently. So just type in cch.chat, put it into your browser or into your mobile phone, and you can take part in the quiz. If you could also say while you're in the chat room, what did you like best about Sarah's presentation? There's certainly some nice touches I loved in there. Sarah, understand the customer journey. Where does the customer fall off the happy path? Which is, I think, a nice touch. Prevention is better than cure. And the recommendation there, the book Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. And if anyone else has got any other management books they've read recently that they think would be good reads, pop that into the chat room as well. And use quiet times to proactively contact customers. So I think that's a sort of really nice way of doing it. So if you just want to pop those into the chat room. Okay, we're going to start a chat. Just log into the chat room, cch.chat or callcenterhelper.com/chat if you want. Here's the little buttons, A, B, C, or D. You just need to click on those with your mouse, the right answer, and we'll go through there. So let me just put the slides up on the screen. We've got 89 people logged into the chat room. Hopefully we'll get a few more logged in as we go through. So let's just start the quiz now. True or false? In most contact centers, more customers call between 10 a.m. and 12 noon than any other any other time. Is that A, true, or B, false? So we've got what, 45 people here. Let's see if we can get a few more voting on this. Again, if you're not logged into the chat room, type in callcenterhelper.com/chat into or cch.chat if it's easier. So let's have a look at there. Actually, most of you got that right. True is the answer. Yes, more customers call between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. than any other time. Why? Because people have either got into work or settled into their day. The other thing not to forget is that most callers call in the first 15 minutes of, or 40% of the hourly calls are handled in within the first 15 minutes of the hour. As people go to a meeting, TV programs just ended, that's the most popular time for people to call. Which of the following methods will not help reduce continuously high contact volumes? This is which one will not help reduce continuously high contact volumes? Is it A, analyzing failure demand? Is it B, extending working hours? Is it C, offering a callback? Or is it D, promoting self-service options? Bit of a tricky one, this one. Which one do you think will not help reduce continuously high contact volumes? So most of you voted on there. Let's have a look at the answer. Well, actually, most of you got that wrong. It's actually offering a callback is the answer. Only use callback solutions if your call volumes are spiky. The question was continuously busy. If you're busy all the time, that your queues are swamped, then calling people back actually can make things worse because you effectively are putting your agents into a queue waiting for the customer to answer the phone. It's particularly good if you've got spiky call volumes, so those quiet periods that Sarah was saying about calling customers back. But if you're continuously busy, it might actually make things worse. So next question, across the entire industry, how did average talk time increase in the first half of 2020 compared to the first half of 2019? Did it increase by 7 seconds? Did it increase by 22 seconds? Did it increase by 37 seconds? Or did it increase by 52 seconds? This is according to a talk desk survey. How much did it increase over that period? So let's have a look at this, the results now. And most of you got it right. Increased by 37 seconds is the answer. It came from a talk desk finding, and I think it was just a lot of it was due to the fact that people were very anxious at the beginning of the whole pandemic, and so needed more reassurance that things were going the way they wanted it to be. Also, things were more fraught. People had difficulty getting through, and if you've got very high call volumes, you do get a lot of people complaining, "Do you know, I was waiting for a long period to get through to you." That just makes things worse as well. So, and then the last question, which author once said, "It's not enough to be busy, so are ants." The question is, what are we busy about? I think it's very appropriate with the increased call volumes. Is it A, Charles Dickens, B, Virginia Woolf, C, George Bernard Shaw, or D, Henry David Thoreau? So which author once said, "It's not enough to be busy, so are ants"? The question is, what are we busy about? So the answer, well, actually, most of you didn't get this one right. It was actually Henry David Thoreau who said that. Another quote from him is, "Our life is frittered away by detail. Simplify, simplify," which I think would be a very good contact center mantra. The problem is that actually in simplifying does require us internally to get a lot of detail. Just because it's simple for the customer doesn't mean that it's simple for us. So let's have a look at the winner. So that is been won by Laura, who had a score of 53. So well done. Thank you very much for that. Let's jump across to the chat room. We'll take a few more tips, and then we can have a look at the slides from Tiago. Where's the tips gone? Here we are, some tips and questions. So Alex said, "I'd recommend the book Nudge which is all about behavioral nudges to help influence people. I think that's, was that by Gladwell? I can't recall that. Sarah, I don't know if you've come across the book Nudge. I think that's the one that was, I think had a few difficulties, because I think, was it more one of the big, it kicked off the, John, I don't know if you know, is this the book that kicked off some of the problems with the last crash we had in the stock market, where some of the bankers went off and took instant decisions, or is this a different book?
I'm not familiar, Jonty, sorry.
Okay, well, I need to read up on that one a bit more. So Sue says, we're a very seasonal business, extremely busy in winter and very quiet in the summer. Service levels vary vastly. Does anyone have any advice on how you target your teams over such varying periods? John, have you got any thoughts?
Well, I mean, service level, it's what you use for service level, I think, are you using the percentage of calls within a period, or do you look at things like abandon rates and average speed of answers, which I believe gives a more detailed view of customers are getting the service they expect, and get away from trying to target them on single days. But, you know, what is it for the year? What is it for the quarter or the month, as opposed to just the short-term periods, because it will always fluctuate.
Indeed. So I think Rachel should put in the book Nudge is a different one to what I was thinking, is about improving decisions about health, wealth, and happiness. Yes, that is a very good book. That book, I think that's the one that suggested that you change, for instance, organ donation from being assumed that you don't want to do it to assume you do want to do it. And we have an awful lot more people who have had transplants as a result of it, including some people I know. Susan has said the Erlang calculator that call center helper have is a great tool. Well, thank you very much for that. Always nice to see that. Wendy says, when you know there is an issue with an application that will have an impact on end users, proactively communicate it. Sarah, I guess that was what you were saying. Email to all users, ACD front-end message, announcement on self-service portal, and saves on users hanging queues just to hear there's an issue. So Sarah, I think that was very similar to what you were suggesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it leaves customers with a sense that you're in control and you know what's happening as well, if you're proactively telling them that there's an issue rather than waiting to hear it from them.
So here's an excellent tip from Roy and Tiago. I think this is a great one. To handle calls during first contact, you should train support agents and give them more permissions to avoid supervisors or further workflows. I guess this is, Tiago, is empowering advisors to be able to do more.
Yes, absolutely, and everyone has to gain with it, because employees will be much more engaged, and that will pass on to the customer. So it's a win-win situation for everyone.
Okay, well let's take another quick tip, and here's tip. In respect to ensuring staffing levels, use quieter times in the day to upskill colleagues from other areas of the business. They can then jump into peaks and help out. Sarah, I see you're smiling on that. I think that's an excellent suggestion.
Yeah, I think it's Zappos in the States where everyone must do 3 months in the contact center before they go into any other part of the business. And therefore, if they have a spike in calls, the phones ring across the entire business. So whether you're the cleaner or the CEO, you'll pick up the call and deal with that customer's query, which I just think is fantastic.
So here's a question. I don't know who's going to be best to handle this one, but is there a benchmark for the number of days used for first call resolution? If the customer phones back within 2 days, or with the customer falling back within a week, does anyone on our panel have a feeling for this?
I've seen it vary, and being an outsourcer with multiple clients, I've actually seen it vary from client to client. I suppose you have to be realistic, and if somebody calls back in 6 months, it's unlikely to be the same query. But it's usually somewhere around that, exactly what's on the screen, a couple of days, maybe in tech support, because it means it's still broken, up to a week in more customer service, because it means the customer's maybe a bit confused or just didn't grasp it or whatever. But to be honest, I've seen it just vary from company to company.
And I guess the challenge is it's not just enough to measure if someone's calling back within a time period, because they may be calling back about something different. I guess the question is it related to that original issue? So it's not just looking at callbacks, but it's also looking at the reason codes in the CRM to see.
And unfortunately, technology can normally tell you they called back, but because maybe not the codes, but the free text from a staff member, it's harder to interrogate that, or you might see a word that's close and artificial intelligence can put them together slightly wrong. So there'll always be a bit of noise. And I think the key thing is picking something, measuring it, usually when things are going well, and using that as a benchmark and saying when that number goes up, then something's going wrong, and use it more as an indicator as opposed to a hard and fast number.
Yes, indeed. So probably a good time now to jump across to Tiago Duruana. And Tiago, if you'd like to share us with your thoughts on how to reduce contact volumes.
Yes, absolutely. Let's just share my screen. Can you see it?
Can't yet. There we go.
Okay. So go back. Today, I have to share 4 best practices to save money with call deflection. Let's call it what we mean. And my first 2 actors here are John and Sarah. Let's just see 2 different experiences. So John, he has a problem with his smart heating system that he purchases from one vendor called Acme, for example. He doesn't know how to configure it. So he goes to the website, he tries to find information, and he finds the phone support. He calls the company, he gets to talk with an agent that walks him through what he needs to do to configure his system. Everyone's happy, everything's working out, John's happy, but at what cost for the company? Let's then look at another scenario. Sarah, she is working with a different company, with LexCorp, for instance, and she also has a problem with her smart heating system. She navigates to the website, she reads some online FAQs, and she finds out that there's videos showing exactly what she needs to do to configure the system. She goes over those videos and bam, the problem is solved. Now, this is what true success it looks like, because Sarah is happy, the company is happy because Sarah is happy, and at the same time they were able to deflect the calls, so less cost without harming the customer experience. If anything, probably it even increased Sarah's expectations. And please do remember that John, his expectations align with Amazon, because he mentioned that he likes when Amazon sets his expectations. So when the smaller companies try to be compared with big players like Amazon, they have a lot to lose. So it's important to take that in consideration. When we talk about the customer experience of tomorrow, we need to think it begins with the digital front door. This is not news to everyone, but COVID, this pandemic, it really showed that digital is the way to go, and there's no way to run from it. Most companies, they can think, oh, we're good. We don't have any problems. We are modern. We are quite advanced. But they ought to question themselves. Are they able to reserve their agents to more complex issue? Are they able to keep up with growing customer base? Are they able to keep up with changing consumer habits? And Sarah, maybe you can take this one back to your customers that says that customers are not buying on mobile. And you can also add to that my eBay purchase list for when I'm bored at 2 a.m. So that's a good example for them to understand. And finally, are they able to deliver exceptional customer service, taking in consideration all of the above? So I guess the summary of this would be, can you scale with what you have now? Because what brought you here won't take you there. And one of the solutions for that may be the use of non-voice channels, always without harming CX, and at the same time while keeping interactions integrated. John, right before I start my presentation, we are talking about measuring the performance and the callbacks. That gets even more important when we add digital channels into the mixture, because oh, that customer called, but what about if he sends a WhatsApp message 3 days from now? Maybe it's the same subject, the same topic. Is the agent aware that that is happening? Is the agent able to connect the dots and make sure that the customer is looked upon in a holistic way so that they can solve their problem more easily? So that's something to add to the mix and make things a bit more complex, but they don't need to be complicated. Starting with the 4 tactics, the first one, improving the IVR experience, something that you can easily do. Just go over your IVR, try to identify pain points. Do you have overly complicated flows? Try to provide some self-service options. Probably the customers, if they're calling you, maybe they already went to the website and they didn't find the information, so be aware of that. But at the same time, maybe there's something that you can do just by looking at your IVR flows. And the end game would be always to streamline operations to have a more straightforward menu. And I think it's quite important to have the right technology to do this, because at the beginning of this webinar, we were saying that what we were planning, John mentioned that what you plan now may not exist, so try to do Groundhog Day. It's important here to have a system and a technology that allows you to do exactly that. Even you have a complex flow or a simple flow, you need to have something that all admins can just go, swap it, and bam, it's ready, it's good to go. Ideally with clicks and not code, because anybody got time for code when a pandemic happens. Second tactic, meeting customers when they want, on the channel they want. This is not news, but customers decide where they want to be. If you look at some stats, so number of Facebook monthly active users, number of WhatsApp users in 180 countries, and average monetizable Twitter daily active users. So customers decide where they are, and companies need to keep up with this. If some organizations were being slow into adapting to this, again, this pandemic showed that that's not an option anymore, because their competitors, they're doing it. Probably they're doing better than you. So it's time to keep up and up your game. And everyone wants the same, of course, to improve customer satisfaction, because customers like to be comfortable with the tools that they know best. You augment their technology comfort. And again, we extend agent engagement, because agents enjoy first having a 360 holistic view about the customers, and also they enjoy using a tool that they probably use in their personal lives. Third tactic, integrating channel entry points into customer touch points. Everyone knows the famous click to call on a website, but we can move forward that. We can, for instance, on an application, we can have buttons to direct contact via live chat an agent, for instance, via Facebook Messenger, via WhatsApp, or even normal chats, and also chatbots, because we can send really important information via chatbots without having to have an agent on call just to answer, oh yeah, our closing hours are from this time to that time. Maybe a chatbot can do that. And like I said on my first slide, you can reserve your agents for more complex issues. And final tactic, optimizing efficiency with deflection perfection. It has a really nice sound to it, don't you think? And it feels even better when you get to experience it. We've been, from all of our research and looking at the customers that TalkDesk has, we were able to see an average of 10% reduction in agent effort and 15% on interaction costs. When you look into customer experience, we're talking about 20% increase, a 20% increase on agent productivity, and 90% increase on customer satisfaction. Seems like a no-brainer, but you shouldn't go there alone. No one is trying to get more silos, because, okay, I'm adding WhatsApp, I'm adding Facebook, I'm adding this and that, and then no one understands, because you don't have an integrated view of all of your systems and all of the channels that you're providing, especially in what pertains to the customer journey, like Sarah mentioned, and also the steps that every agent needs to go through to have a satisfied customer. And again, don't think that it's as easy as, oh, let's have a live chat or build it and they'll come. It's not like that. It's complex. But again, it doesn't need to be complicated. So I think it's really important for organizations to make inventory or get someone to help them make inventory of everything that needs to be changed according to their customers and not according with what others are saying. And then they should partner with someone that can help them have a true plan from implementation to value realization. So I think that's the fourth tactic. Don't go there alone, and follow the book and do the things the right way. And I have a lot more to say, but that's all the time that Jointy gave me. So that's all.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Tiago, and some great things in there. If you'd like to see a demonstration of the TalkDesk solution, certainly some of their messaging technologies can be good. Tiago, some great things there. Customer experience begins with the digital front door. So reserve agents for more complex issues, I think is a great one. Offer messaging channels, things such as Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and then work on, I did like deflection perfection. And you deflect calls to other sources. So some great things on there. So thank you very much indeed for that. We're going to have a look at some top tips and questions. And the first tip comes in from Laura, who says, if you can't prevent the call in the first place by sending an email, for example, but you know there is a temporary issue causing a spike, put a message on the front end IVR with information about it and the estimated fixed time. I guess, Tiago, this is something you were talking about changing the IVR. Laura says, we started doing this and it's helped reduce some calls and also helps the agents, as the customers already have that heads up when they choose to still connect to an agent. Tiago, I think that's a good one.
Yeah, yes, this is a really good one. It is something that I personally experienced. It's one of the perfect use cases for telcos, for instance. Here in Portugal, whenever we have a downtime and everyone is trying to call to talk to, oh, what's happening with my internet? And then telcos are able to see where the person is calling from, and they see, oh, we have a problem here. So instead of going to a live agent, they deflect the call to an IVR that says, we know you're having trouble in your area. No need to report it. We're fixing it. So I think this is a really good use case for telcos, for example.
Wonderful. We've got a couple of tips, Sarah, on communication. Will says, good communication with clients can make the difference for their customers. Depending on what type of call center services are provided, we can enable clients to be proactive in their communications using the Amazon example to post alerts, send emails, or auto dial calls. Will provide awareness to customers. This works well with the ITIL Foundation of Continual Service Improvement. I'm not sure I've come across that one. And in a similar vein, Polina says, be as transparent as possible as a company in all your process and procedures that impact with customers. So some good advice there, Sarah.
Yeah, great advice. And particularly around the transparency, building that trust, being really open about the fact that we are experiencing an issue right now. This is what we're doing about it. This is what we need from you. Is all going to go a long way to building trust and faith with your customer. So great advice there.
And Tiago, Alex says, always have a clear signpost to your self-serve options on every written correspondence with your customer, and hyperlink it if it's available. If it's via email, social, SMS, or Q code, and also if it's a letter. Reducing the friction can make all the difference. Tiago, I like that.
Yes, I do enjoy this because it perfectly it makes actionable my third tactic of making touch points interact with themselves. And maybe customers, they prefer to use WhatsApp, but they don't know that option exists. So just let's make their lives easier.
Okay, Sue says empathy with colleagues internally will be felt by customers externally. I know we focus on customer empathy, but sometimes the team building is a good one. And John, here's a quite nice one. Laura says, I think Laura's trying to win the prize today. We've created a virtual suggestion box where agents can anonymously provide feedback about anything from training, resources, management, employee experience, our product, etc. I meet with management once a week to discuss the suggestions coming in, then follow up with the agent who submitted the feedback if they left their name. I'm compiling a more generalized feedback for all of the agents. They know what improvements we're working on. This also lets them know that we are listening. If you ask for feedback, you must follow through with the person who provided it to let them know what, if anything, you are doing about that. I guess, John, it's very easy to start a virtual suggestion box, but it's actually often the follow-up that people fail on.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked, quite recently in a company who had that, and they did put their name to it, and it got split up amongst different departments based on the topic. And what I found was actually just sitting down and talking, you probably sometimes discover more. Like I remember one young lady, and in the end, we thought it came down to the last bus home ended 10 minutes before the late shift ended. She wasn't doing voice, so we just changed her schedule. But then her colleagues realised that the company listen, the company empathise and do the right thing. And that feeds through the staff and onto the customers.
And on the subject of schedule, Aaron has said annualized hours could help with seasonality. That's certainly become very popular. If you're not familiar with annualized hours, also known as banked hours, basically you have the ability to work sort of kind of unpaid overtime or bank hours during busy periods, which then during quieter periods you can then build up to take hours or days off later in the quiet periods in the year. Always works well, providing you can actually allow people to take time off in those quieter periods when they want to. I've seen that had a few problems. I think a number of people are going there. And Sarah, Declan says, we use time out each day while work from home for huddles. This gives time to speak to the agents and brief out any company changes, processes they may have missed. A bi-weekly quiz on recent ones with a small incentive keeps people active. Upskilling 101 says Declan. I do like this sort of huddle during the course of the day, but you do need to be able to block people out in the communication system to allow them to do that, Sarah.
I love that idea. And as well, while people are working from home, it's recognizing people have got different learning styles, and therefore simply having a briefing that goes in one direction or simply having a roundtable conversation isn't going to work for everyone. So things like the quiz, which will help the kinesthetic learners to have put it into practice before showing that they've understood it, and thinking about different learning styles is a brilliant way of keeping people involved in what's changing.
And quite a nice feedback from Aaron here. Remember that any digital contact deflection strategy, that the average duration on the calls and other service channels will probably go up. So, but as we discussed before, increasing duration, if you can get resolution, isn't necessarily a bad time. Well, we've reached the top of the hour. If you could just pop into the chat room, what did you like best about today's webinar? Our winning tip comes from Alan. Alan says the best way to deal with the call is not to get it in the first place. I think this probably sums up a lot that I think all of our speakers have said. Understand what calls you're receiving and what drives those calls. Work with other areas of the business to look at automated processes, e.g. the website or proactive customer service experience proactive customer experience management to reduce incoming calls without negatively impacting customer experience. I think a great summary there on a lot of what we've done. We've got a little survey if you'd like to complete that before you leave. The recording will be available probably in about half an hour. callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. You can get a recording. You probably want to share this with your this webinar with your management team, so you can get that there. We're back in 3 weeks' time after the Easter break, when we're looking at changing channels, changing chat. So just like to thank to our 3 speakers. John Casey, thank you for joining us today.
No problem. Pleasure as always, Jonty.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah Morgan, for joining us.
You're very welcome. Always a pleasure.
And Tiago Durana, thank you for joining us for your first webinar with us. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you for the invitation. This was fun.
Thanks a lot. And we'll see you all back on our webinar program in 3 weeks' time on the 15th of April. Thanks very much, then. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.